अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनकारणम्। Hare Krishna and welcome back to today's episode of the Mahabharata. It is the nature of all pure devotees to always glorify Krishna with whatever resources they have at their disposal. Generally, we see that if somebody becomes very wealthy, or he becomes very powerful, he is very beautiful, or he is very famous, the people bask in their own glories and they feel they have a right to enjoy whatever they have earned or they have got by way of destiny in their favor. But the devotees, the pure devotees of the Supreme Lord Krishna, no matter whatever resources they have, they never think of enjoying it themselves. They always think of how to utilize it in the service of the Supreme Lord Krishna and how to give him happiness. Yudhishthira Maharaj, he had become the king of Indraprastha, a very vibrant city, and the citizens were all very happy with his ruling, and Indraprastha had become a very opulent place. It had become a very opulent kingdom. Yudhishthira and his brothers, although they were ruling over Indraprastha and the other subordinate kings, whoever were associated with their kingdom, still their motive for ruling over or remaining as kings was not their own personal enjoyment or their own personal conveniences. Yudhishthira Maharaj, after he became king, he was thinking how he could utilize his position as a king to glorify Krishna, to please Krishna. So, after consulting with others and in consonance with his brothers, Yudhishthira Maharaj thought that the best way to glorify Krishna would be to create a platform for it, where all the devatas of the universe would assemble, along with all the other prominent kings of the world, of the earth. So, to create this kind of platform, what had to be done? Yudhishthira Maharaj thought of organizing a Rajasuya Yajna. This Rajasuya Yajna is conducted by a king to declare his supremacy over other kings in his kingdom. And in this kind of sacrifice, all the prominent people of the whole world, of the society, not only kings, but even sages and rishis and all such eminent personalities of that time were invited. And in that Rajasuya Yajna, the unique thing was that as part of that yajna, as part of that sacrifice, it was a custom to select the most prominent person in that assembly and offer him the Agra Puja, or the first worship. So Yudhishthira Maharaj thought the Rajasuya Yajna is the right platform where if he had invited all the kings of the world as well as all the devatas and rishis and sages to that sacrifice, in the midst of all of them, he could select Krishna as the most worshipable personality, which would establish Krishna's supremacy over everyone else. Thinking like this, Yudhishthira Maharaj thought that this Rajasuya Yajna I have to perform, which is the best way to glorify Krishna with the resources and with the position that I have obtained today, which is all by the mercy, by the grace of that same Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Now it so happened that Narada Muni happened to come to Indraprastha, and so Yudhishthira Maharaj requested Narada Muni to take his message to Dwaraka, to Lord Krishna, expressing his desire to conduct a Rajasuya Yajna to glorify Krishna. And if Krishna were to accept this proposal, then Yudhishthira Maharaj could go ahead and organize this event. Narada Muni was very happy to take Yudhishthira Maharaj's message, because not only was he taking a wonderful message of an opportunity to glorify Krishna by his pure devotees, the Pandavas, it was also a wonderful opportunity for Narada Muni to visit Dwaraka and have an audience, have darshan of Lord Krishna, his most dear, worshipable Supreme Lord. So Narada Muni very happily agreed to Yudhishthira Maharaj's proposal, and he took Yudhishthira Maharaj's message to Dwaraka. As soon as Narada Muni reached Dwaraka, Krishna was seated in his assembly known as Sudharma, and he was discussing some important matter with the rest of the Yadavas. So they were all absorbed in a very intense discussion. But as soon as Narada Muni entered the assembly hall, Krishna took notice, and he immediately stood up from his seat and gave a very respectable position to Narada Muni. And then he, in accordance with the standard procedure of welcoming great rishis and sages and renounced personalities, Krishna washed the lotus feet of Narada Muni. Actually, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narada Muni is his eternal devotee. Narada Muni always constantly worships the lotus feet of Krishna. It would have been appropriate for Narada Muni to wash the lotus feet of Krishna. But then, Krishna wanted to set an example about how even the most powerful king, when he comes across a highly renounced spiritualist like Narada Muni, he should forget his position, and that renounced person should be given a higher pedestal than even a king, and he should accord the highest welcome to that spiritual personality with all humility, expressed by touching the lotus feet and washing the lotus feet of that great personality. Narada Muni also understood Krishna's desire to set an example, and so he also played along. Although in his heart he knew that Krishna is a supreme person, he is my worshipable Lord, but then the Lord has certain purpose in his activities, and so Narada Muni also went along with Krishna's activity. And then once Narada Muni was comfortably seated, he had been welcomed properly, then Lord Krishna put forth before Narada Muni his questions, that how are you, Narada Muni? Is your purpose being met in executing various penances to progress spiritually? Is wherever you have gone, have you found that all auspicious activities of dharma are being carried out? And do you have any news of the Pandavas? When Narada Muni was questioned like this, he smiled and replied to Krishna, Krishna, you are the supreme proprietor of the whole world, of the whole material creation. You are the creator, maintainer and annihilator of this material universe. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are the all-pervasive Super Soul present within every atom and in everyone's heart. So nothing is hidden from you. You are omniscient. You are knowledgeable about everything. But still, you are asking as a pastime this question from me as if you do not know anything. So still, I will, since you have asked this question, I will reply to it. And so saying, Narada Muni informed Lord Krishna about his visit to Indraprastha and how Yudhishthira Maharaj had sent a proposal to conduct a Rajasuya Yajna where Lord Krishna would be the person who would be accorded the Agra Puja, the first worship, as the most worshipable personality. So when Narada Muni put this proposal before Lord Krishna, and he said, now that Yudhishthira Maharaj has invited, that you should please accept this proposal and immediately start for Indraprastha. When this proposal was put by Narada Muni before Lord Krishna, all the other Yadava members who were present in that assembly, they were not very favorable for this proposal. They did not like this proposal that Krishna should immediately leave for Indraprastha. Why? Why were the Yadavas not amenable to Krishna going to Indraprastha, where Krishna would only be glorified? Yadavas are also the devotees of Krishna. So if Krishna is glorified, Yadavas will be the happiest people. But still, to this proposal, they were not agreeable. Why? What was the reason? Because just before Narada Muni had reached that spot, the Yadavas had been discussing with Krishna about an imminent attack that they had to carry out on Jarasandha, on Magadha. Now, if with Narada Muni's proposal, if they had to, Krishna had to leave them and go to the Indraprastha, then that plan could not be put into action. Now, what was so pressing about that plan that they should go and attack Magadha, that it could not wait for the Rajasuya Yajna to get over? So, in the last episode, we had seen how Jarasandha had attacked and imprisoned 20,000 kings. Now, these kings, desiring to be freed from the clutches of Jarasandha, they managed to somehow get the support of one person from outside and sent a message through him to Dwaraka. This man, carrying the message of the 20,000 kings, came to the assembly of the Yadavas, came to Dwaraka, and he presented the message before Krishna. So the Yadavas did not know who this person was. He has brought a message, and then he explained that he had come from Magadha, carrying the message of the kings who had been imprisoned by Jarasandha. What was this message? The messenger informed the Lord Krishna that these kings were saying that Krishna is the embodiment of Sat, Chit and Ananda. He is the embodiment of eternity, all knowledge and all bliss. As such, nobody can know the glories of that Supreme Lord Krishna. It is impossible to measure the limitless glories of Krishna. Krishna is the infinite personality. So who can know his glories? But still, those who are surrendered fully to the lotus feet of Krishna, those who are pure devotees, can know a fraction of his glories. And one who has understood even a fraction of Krishna's glories immediately becomes liberated from this material world of repeated birth and death. In fact, Lord Krishna himself says in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo janati tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanmanaiti so Arjuna. One who simply understands that Krishna, his birth and his activities are not like that of ordinary mortals, but they are divine. Simply if one understands this much, he doesn't even need to know all the Vedas, Upanishads. He doesn't need to be a big scholar. He doesn't have to be a highly renounced person. He doesn't have to execute severe tapasya. None of these things are required. Simply if he accepts on the strength of Krishna's words that his birth and activities are all transcendental, divine, and they are not at all like our birth and activities, that person is immediately liberated. So the king said that anybody who knows even a fraction of your glories immediately becomes liberated. And such personalities render unmotivated, loving devotional service to the lotus feet of Krishna. So although loving service to Krishna is very pleasing to the heart, anybody who renders devotional service to Krishna, anybody who takes up the process of rendering devotional service to Krishna, beginning with chanting his holy name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That whole process, even the chanting of Krishna's holy name is so pleasing to the heart that one will forget all one's material distresses. Despite this, people are averse to becoming devotees of Krishna. They don't want to have anything to do with devotional service to Krishna. They are involved in their own plans for increasing their enjoyment and keeping away distress in their life. But because they are averse to the devotional service of Krishna, the force of Kala enforces various kinds of miseries in a person's life. And that force of Kala, that force of time, it frustrates all one's plans and attempts and desires to enjoy in this material world. And therefore, everybody becomes filled with anxiety in this material world. The time force never allows one to unlimitedly, unrestrictedly enjoy material happiness in this world. And that time factor, the kings say that the time factor is but a partial representation of Krishna. Kala is a portion, is an insignificant portion of the Supreme Lord Krishna. And therefore, the kings said, we surrender to your feature as Kala, because Kala is all powerful. Kala is that indomitable force which brings about change, whether we like it or not, in our lives. And so the kings, all the kings said, we are surrendering to your feature of Kala. And not only this, the kings said, Krishna, you are the proprietor of all the universes. You are the proprietor of the whole creation. You are the Supreme Lord. But still you have descended from your spiritual abode, Goloka Vrindavan, to this material universe, simply to protect your devotees and to chastise, to punish, to annihilate those atheistic demons who do not accept your sovereignty. So the king said, so you are the Supreme Lord, you have advented to punish the atheists and to protect your devotees. So it is bewildering to us. How is it that this Jarasandha, who is such an atheist, he is able to unrestrictedly flout your laws and remain in a powerful position despite being such a great atheist and not accepting your position as a Supreme Personality of Godhead? And how is it that we, who are your devotees, we are having to suffer in your presence? The only way we can understand this, the king said, is that all the position of the kings that we used to enjoy was the result of our past pious activities, and whatever we are suffering in the imprisonment of Jarasandha, undergoing so many tortures, is also the result of our past sinful activities. So, but then the kings said, anybody who surrenders to your lotus feet, Krishna, he immediately becomes freed from all past happiness and distress. All kinds of material happiness and distress goes out of a person's life if he is surrendered to your lotus feet, and he enjoys supreme, eternal, transcendental bliss. Therefore, because we are in this kind of material anxiety and distress, and we have got fed up with the kind of temporary happiness and distress that is available in this material world, which keeps coming and going in our life, although we may not want it. Therefore, we are giving up everything and we are surrendering ourselves totally unto your lotus feet. So now you please decide what has to be done to us, what is going to be our fate. Whether we have to continue suffering like this or you want to free us from the clutches of Jarasandha, we leave it to you. We are surrendering totally unto your lotus feet and we are completely dependent upon you. And so like this, the messenger presented the imprisoned king's message before Lord Krishna, and then he told Krishna, now I have presented before you those kings who are suffering because of Jarasandha's torture. Now you may please decide what is the suitable action to be taken. So when the messenger said like this, immediately Krishna started consulting with all the Yadavas that we should attack Magadha immediately and free all these kings who are suffering for no fault of theirs. Just because they are devotees of Krishna, Jarasandha has imprisoned them, and he is thinking of conducting a mass human sacrifice for Kala Bhairava, by which he will become even more powerful and he will inflict even more suffering on the people. So it was in the midst of this discussion that Narada Muni landed up on the spot, and therefore the Yadavas were not happy with Narada Muni's proposal that Krishna should immediately go to Indraprastha. Now on the one side, the pure devotees of Krishna, the Pandavas, are calling him to come to Indraprastha immediately, and on the other side there are these kings who are also devotees of Krishna and who want Krishna to come and save them from the clutches of Jarasandha. So Krishna was torn between these two proposals. Where should Krishna go? Now what to do? How did Krishna resolve this? What was Krishna's response? Please join us in our next episode to learn about the decision of Krishna. Which way did he choose? Did he go to Indraprastha to satisfy Yudhishthira Maharaj, or did he go and attack Magadha to free the kings from the clutches of Jarasandha? So please join us in our next episode. Thank you for joining us today. Hare Krishna. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.